So which is better right now, WWE or AEW? It's tough because I feel like both companies have been in better places than where they are now. Like there's a lot of good still going on in AEW and like obviously WWE, like they have the moments, but I think AEW is the company that I've struggled to invest with more probably over the last like 12 months or so. The whole Death Riders thing. I know it picked up at the end, but I was so done. It's just so tired and made me check out. And a lot of the mid-card stuff isn't really popping as well as maybe as it has done in the past. I'm just not all that invested in much outside of the Hangman story right now. I think that's just where my brain is with AEW. Whereas WWE, I know WWE has not been perfect in 2025 in particular. It's had its moments, like the Cena heel turn has been an experience, let's call it that. But there's still been a few bright spots there, like scattered around. Like Cody has done incredible with everything he's been given. He's been put in some strange positions like over the last year, and I think he's still been fantastic. Punk still had his moments. I'm not talking about the Punkonomic stuff. We ain't gonna go there. But yeah, like the whole AJ Lee stuff now with Punk and Seth and Becky, that's really picked up, and I'm like, oh, I'm glued into that. I want to see what's going on with that thing. That's like the hottest thing in wrestling at time of recording, when we're recording this, and that's fully got my investment. I think anything the women are doing right now has been pretty damn good in WWE. Evolution in particular, just reminding me why like the women are, for me, the shining lights in WWE in particular, and have made it so watchable even at times when it has been a bit dodgy. You talk about that WrestleMania 3-way that they had, the Io Sky, Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair one. That was match of the weekend. Unbelievable thing. That just reignited the fire in me over a weekend where, again, you find yourself questioning at times like, this is fine, but are we past the boom? Are we there? Are we on the way down? Then that happens and you're like, oh, there's still something greater in WWE. There's still some fantastic talent. Your likes of Rhea Ripley, again, Bianca Belair, Io Sky. Anything Io Sky and Asuka are doing right now has been fantastic. I've got hope for like the last few months of Cena's run, whatever the hell this is at this point. I know all the Brock stuff has kind of brought a big cloud over that, and just over WWE in general. But things like the AJ Lee return has just been a nice moment, and like just kind of restored my faith a little bit in the company, which seems to kind of gone somewhat off the rails after the whole Netflix thing. But there is signs of life, and that's why I feel like it's in the better place right now. That could change very quickly in the world of wrestling, so I cannot wait to be proven wrong, probably by the time this video drops.
Come on, what are we doing here, eh? Obviously WWE. Are you kidding me? Wrestling, look, it depends what you want in your wrestling. Ooh, good matches. Dime a dozen, basically. Wrestling is moments, Andy, and who's had the better moments this year? We've had to sit through the dirge of the Death Riders for years now, including this year. We had a kind of tiny diamond in a cow pat with, oh yeah, Hangman Page has won. But they're still here now, so that's not going anywhere. Meanwhile, you've got Yeet in the Royal Rumble. You've got John Cena's epic heel turn. It might not have gone quite to plan, but hey, we got the pipe bomb out of it, huh? So, and we got the SummerSlam match, and you know, Logan Paul in Paris. I guess you had to be there for that one, I suppose. You had genuinely a phenomenal, and let's be fair, we were going into WrestleMania with a bit of trepidation, and a lot of people told me triple threat matches aren't the thing. And then what happened at WrestleMania? Oh, hang on, there was three actually across the entire weekend. There was the NXT triple threat match, Night 1 triple threat match, Night 2 triple threat match were all amazing. So apparently triple threats are good now. What's all that about? Going on from there. Evolution was the best show of the year, so that's that dealt with. And I think to boil this down very simply, I think if you are going to try and, you know, achieve something, if you aren't one of the two big wrestling promotions, you go after the market leader, the biggest show. And who's TNA invaded? Oh, that's right, the best wrestling show of the week, NXT. Case closed.
CMLL probably is the better of the two right now. Interesting thing to consider at this specific point in time when it feels like a lot of that initial honeymoon period for Triple H is long worn off. It's kind of like the conversation that people were having about AEW in like 2022, that kind of era, when it was like, is this still as good as it was last year? And then 2023 happens and the devil shows up and it's definitely not as good as it was in 2021. But I think that AEW has successfully recovered from, in my opinion, the worst storyline in that company's history. that being the Devil. The Death Riders were trending in that direction for a while, but Jon Moxley has kind of pulled them out of the mud, and I've enjoyed his work a great deal lately as well. But I think both shows are very similar in a lot of many ways. I mean, if you sit here and you were to put side by side the average episode of Raw and the average episode of Dynamite, the in-ring standards in AEW would be a little higher because that is more of a focus for that company. And WWE would do certain other things better as well, blah, 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 blah. But it's like structurally, they're very similar. They both have a lot of screwy finishes. They both have a lot of soapy storylines. They both have a lot of things that are created to generate moments rather than simple, logical, structural storytelling that comes as a result of like well-plotted payoffs and stuff like that. A lot of it is TikTok-style goldfish booking. And while there are kind of some tonal differences in all of this stuff, I think they're actually very, very similar shows. So I've boiled down to what do I prefer? The average AEW pay-per-view or the average WWE PLE? And the answer is AEW. Yes, look, it's long. 5 hours is a long show. But actually, one of the luxuries of viewing it in a different time zone is that I can just wake up and skip the stuff that doesn't sound fun. And I can skip the entrances and all of this stuff and make it not a 5-hour experience. If I was watching it live, it would be totally different. Whereas that also applies to WWE as well. But fundamentally, if I have to skip 60% of your show because it's adverts and vignettes for people who haven't been on TV for a year, and hey, do you want to watch Peacock show number 54? No, I don't. I don't want to watch season 28 of At Home with the Dogs or whatever. I don't know. I don't know any American TV. The Jetsons. What's that? Is that still around?
Yeah,
I don't know.
probably.
Yeah, HBO drama. To me, that's a pretty simple equation. I think that the in-ring standards on AEW pay-per-views is through the roof compared to the average WWE PLE. I don't think that's very controversial. And ultimately, on the whole, what do I prefer more on a monthly basis when I'm sitting in to watch these things? Because I'm paid to do it, which is an honor and a privilege and a joy. AEW. There you go.
Well, personal preference, as a disclaimer, if you like, I obviously prefer AEW to WWE. So I think the fairest way to tackle this is to consider which promotion is doing the best job of servicing its fan base right now and indeed across 2025. And last year, I would have said WWE easily. WrestleMania 40 felt like the grand return of long-term storytelling, and they did an incredible job of re-energizing their fan base and telling them, if you persist with our storytelling, you will get rewarded in the end. That was true as well in 2023, which coincided with AEW's significant creative drop-off. So if genuinely, even though I prefer one company to the other, if you had to ask me this question in 2023 and 2024, I would have said WWE. However, paradigm shift in incredible rates in pro wrestling, and in 2025, I think the fairest way to assess this genuinely is to look at the two major destination events held by the respective companies, WWE WrestleMania 41 and AEW All in Texas, because that's ultimately what pro wrestling is. It's a TV cycle building to destination shows. That's ultimately what, if you can reduce it, that's what you can reduce it to. WrestleMania 41 verged on a disaster, so much so that the massive story coming out of it, WWE had to sort of embarrassingly retcon and all but say, that was a terrible decision and we haven't followed up on it particularly well at all. Let's just all pretend it did not happen. Conversely, AEW, like, it's quite a significant achievement, I think, All in Texas. We are recording this a few months removed from it. It's been a little bit uninspiring, I would say, the TV cycle after All in Texas. It was not, in fact, this huge event that has catalyzed this new creative boom. However, what they did was, I hate this phrase, and I apologize profusely for saying it, for one night at least, they restored the feeling. They finally, in my opinion, exercised the ghost of CM Punk. It felt like the first time. It felt like a post-CM Punk promotion in a good and effective way. They built matches brilliantly well. The matches, even though this card was goddamn 6 hours long, got away with itself, is the phrase I use for it. They coronated Hangman Page again. Toni Storm versus Mercedes Money really felt like they'd cracked the women's division. All across the board, great stories were told and paid off, and fans were jubilant. If you contrast the mood between AEW and WWE fans in July 2024 2025 and April 2025. I think there is only one rational answer to this, even if TV-wise, both promotions are boring as sin right now.
So I always think answering the question of which is better, AEW or WWE, is silly because professional wrestling is what we care about, and ultimately, one week you can be into AEW, then something changes and you like WWE and vice versa. I mean, we saw it this year. I mean, not this year, last year is probably a better example. But after WrestleMania 40, everyone was like, oh my gosh, it's the best thing ever. Then AEW, well, we'll just go with All In this year. I was like, oh my gosh, AEW, which is how it should be. That's a good thing. You should follow your instincts that are deep down in your tum-tum. But I suppose at the moment, given what I do set ups and downs, I probably am enjoying AEW more, only because WWE's kind of fallen into a lull with its distractions, its interference and its confusions, and I understand that as well. I do. We have 52 weeks of programming a year, not everything is going to be good. Again, when the Death Riders started, people were sort of criticising the way that John Moxley was handling things, and you know, Dynamite did have a drudgy feel to it, but I just think everything since All In, and Hangman 1, is that All In? I get confused, has been pretty fun and pretty exciting. I liked all the MJF stuff. Thought it was hilarious. He tried to set fire to Mark Briscoe. I had very interesting tastes. I really enjoyed the AEW Philadelphia ECW arena thing. I thought that was awesome. I thought that was cool. I like it that AEW can do that because arguably WWE just can't, because they're at different passages in their journey, to use stupid 2025 words. But yeah, there's just something about AEW at the moment that I really like. And again, I got to go to Forbidden Door. I was there live, so of course that's going to give you all the warm and fuzzy feelings in your Tootsie Toes as well. But yeah, I think AEW's on the up at the moment, and WWE's kind of, it's not cold, just lukewarm, and then something will happen and it will switch around, especially going into WrestleMania. But yes, gun to my head, I probably am enjoying AEW at the moment. But as I'm sitting here on Wednesday the 3rd of September, AJ Lee may be about to return to WWE. Do you see what I mean? So I'm excited about that. I don't really look at shows as the overall, you know, what's the word I'm looking for, but like a foundational thing. It's just more, what can I take from each of the individual programs I have watched? And what did I enjoy? And what haven't I not enjoyed? And what can I give it up and what have I given it down? Been trying to tell that to people that watch for 10 years, but it's always been, no, AEW had 10 ups and 4 downs, and Raw had 7 ups and 3 downs, which means you enjoyed AEW more. I've never actually sit down to think about it, which isn't even a lie. I guess I'm just a piece of trash.
But which company is better right now? For me, both have plenty of problems and plenty to enjoy, of course, but I'd give the edge, for my personal tastes, to WWE, just about. And the reason I give the nod to WWE, it's not even necessarily because of what WWE is doing, if that makes sense. It's just there's more stuff in AEW that's a bit of a turn-off for me. I mean, I'm all for blood in professional wrestling when used at the right time, when used sparingly, when used so rarely that it makes an impact on those sparse times when someone bleeds, giving a shock value, an extra layer to a feud, an extra intensity to a feud. And that's one of my big turn-offs of AEW right now, is the violence has reached levels that just aren't for me, especially when it's so frequent. And yes, I absolutely don't want to see people drinking each other's blood, sticking needles in faces, Darby Allin nearly having his ear ripped off by John Moxley, the spike back in Moxley's back, the skewers in Moxley's head, Darby's ridiculous bump in that Sting retirement match. I mean, they are extremes, but I just find that the weekly TV product so often just falls back on violence for the sake of violence, which does nothing but, you know, saturate what you're doing, lessens the impact as a viewer. Because, hey, rather than seeing that stuff once every 6 months, nah, it's just Wednesday. It's not just that, but there's an over-reliance as well of lazily throwing together those 8-man tag matches, 10-man tag matches, all-star matches that are just a lazy way to put a match together, especially when it's done, again, so frequently every single week, it feels like. I mean, WWE is extremely lazy, don't get that wrong. They're the same format and formula for 90% of its Raws and SmackDowns, the same screwy main event finishes to those shows lately, the same 20-minute show opening promo segment. But for me, if I had to say which product I enjoy more right now, if we're talking solely about what we see on TV, there's more that I dislike about AEW than there is about WWE. So WWE by default. I mean, how the two companies are run, that's a different story when you look at some of WWE's more questionable practices, but when just focusing on the television product, WWE wins out for this guy.
What was that post on X a little while ago? Guys, they're having a mid-off. 2025 stinks, man. And that's why I'm saying AEW. It's not been a good year for either mainstream or promotions, in fact. But it just feels like a first in this era of the two major promotions where neither has had a particularly great year. It was so easy to track when one was on top rather than the other. And, you know, we talk about things like customer satisfaction and the things that ultimately, like,
yes, it's always going to be subjective, but the things that like try and at least lean an argument in one direction more so than another. And I just think as a weekly viewer of both, the arguments are too strong for neither company, particularly offering any great satisfaction. And as a result, I can only really lean on which company has had the more logical of the two shows, and that's AEW by a whisker. Look, I'm a parent and I look at WWE and say I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. There have been so many missed opportunities this year with WWE where, whilst the bloom was off the rose from as early as the Netflix special, they still could have seen through several of their major angles, and this obsessive need to counter-promote, thus creating more shows and more theoretically big events, has meant that matches that would have once built quite carefully to the tentpole events across, you know, the Big Four and Money in the Bank, or even gone from WrestleMania to WrestleMania, have now been rushed through Saturday night's main event specials on PLEs that have only been dropped into the schedule just to counter-program something AEW have been doing. Meanwhile, AEW, even when it's not been the most captivating, and that is probably a bit of an understatement, has at least just held the wheel with its major stories. You know, the Death Riders was at one point generating like angry criticism every single week, but they held the wheel because they saw the bigger picture and they were able to coronate Hangman Page. They've been able to at least elevate a few baby faces. If it still feels like that ceiling is pretty low, because we only need to look at someone like Mark Briscoe, who has to be rebuilt all over and again, because one minute he's in a superheated program, the next he's back dicking around on television, wasting his time as a comedy character, and then the cycle repeats and repeats and repeats. I don't say this with particular enthusiasm for either show, truthfully, but I think if one has held on to its principles more than another, from a storytelling point of view in 2025, it's All Elite Wrestling. Major, vast, enormous improvements needed in 2026 for both sides, otherwise we'll be sat here in 12 months saying the same thing again.
That cheer really disagrees with you.